Good morning, everyone. I'm Candace Brake with the Greater Owensboro Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us this morning. We have business and community leaders here throughout Western Kentucky. Our chambers in this region, we all work together every day to serve West Kentucky. And it's a powerful thing to know that people from the Ohio River all the way to the Purchase region are joining here together to get through this. All of us here today are participating because we have some tough decisions to make and tough choices to get us through these next few weeks or months. But rest assured, as Governor Beshear has said time and time again, we are all in this together and we will get through this. Thank you also to those of you who have submitted questions, which we have already given to Deputy Secretary Benton. I'm now going to turn this over to our presenter today, Josh Benton, who is Deputy Secretary for the Kentucky Education and Workforce Development Cabinet. I do want to just briefly introduce Josh, who was appointed in July 2018 to serve as Deputy Secretary for the Kentucky Education and Workforce Development Cabinet. With more than 15 years of public service, Josh has dedicated his career to strengthening Kentucky's workforce and building the state's economy. He has long been a friend to us here in West Kentucky and here in Owensboro-Davis County for almost 2 decades, which seems really hard to know that right now, doesn't it, Josh? But
yes,
anyway,
it
I'll
does.
turn it over to Deputy Secretary Benton and thank him so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Candace. Glad to be able to join you all and really appreciate the level of collaboration among all the different communities throughout West Kentucky who've joined for this information. And just to echo a couple of things, this is really an unusual time. It's something that we're going to get through. It's a challenge right now from multiple fronts, but for all the business and community leaders that are on this, it's we just want to express our appreciation to you, and that we know things are challenging right now. Some of you are having to make decisions. Many of you are having to make decisions that you never thought you'd have to make, and so we want to be supportive in that. And so today we'll talk about just some of the changes that we've made to unemployment insurance so that we can address what's going on. We'll also talk about some of the things that are happening at the federal level that hopefully will be getting passed by the end of the week, and that will give us some access to additional resources. But this is, as the governor says over and over again, is that just the uniqueness of this, that we are confident that it's a temporary situation. We hope that time frame is shorter rather than longer, and that when we get through this, we'll hopefully be able to pick up where we left off. 2 weeks ago feels like a really long time right now, but we were in pretty good shape as a state economy, as a national economy. And hopefully the duration of this will be short enough where we can pick up where we left off and get back to work as soon as we're able. So obviously unemployment is outside of the public health issues that we're all familiarizing ourselves with right now. I would say most of us are becoming familiar with unemployment insurance. And as we've talked about on the press conferences, in the evenings, unemployment insurance, along with many other programs, were not built for this scenario. And so we are having to make some needed changes to be able to accommodate more individuals than we've ever seen applying for unemployment insurance. The national numbers came out this morning about last week's UI claims, and it's almost 3.3 million claims. Which is something we've never seen before as a country. From the state perspective, we were around 75,000 claims last week, and so there's nothing we've never seen before. That's over a 3,500% increase from 1 week to the next. It's just completely unprecedented. And so some things that we're doing to change, we tried to loosen the restrictions around unemployment insurance so that individuals can receive unemployment compensation faster than they normally would under normal circumstances. So I just want to talk through some of those changes. I think it'll answer a lot of the questions that were submitted. We'll also talk about the announcement that was made last night regarding um, those individuals and employers that typically don't qualify for unemployment insurance and how we're handling that situation. And then we'll also talk through, just, the federal legislation that passed the Senate and what those potential implications would look like. So some of the first things that we did last Monday was there was an executive order issued that waived the 1 week waiting period that someone had to wait during that first week before they could file for unemployment insurance. So what that means is, when someone normally would apply, they would have to wait a week so that our staff could do due diligence. And then we would also be verifying with the employer on the status of that individual's employment. And then starting on the second week is when their claim would be processed. And after the end of the second week, they could claim their benefit, but it would only be for 1 week. So that 1 week waiting period was not eligible to be paid out. By waiving that 1 week waiting period, the time frame doesn't change in order to file and receive a claim, but they will be paid out for a 2 week period for the first payment instead of just 1 week. So after that, it's essentially a 2 week payroll situation where someone on UI requests a UI payment, and the payments come in every 2 weeks. From start to finish, if there's no issues with their claim when it's submitted, their first payment should come, somewhere between 13 and 16 days of the initial filing. And again, it will be for a 2 week pay period instead of just a 1 week. So that's really what that waiver of the 1 week waiting period was all about. There's a couple of things that we also waived. That there's requirements in unemployment insurance that someone has to say that they're able and available to go to work. We're just treating everyone as being available and able to go to work right now. Obviously, 99% of the folks that are now requesting UI were working last week, and so we're treating this as everyone is able and available to go to work once they are able to do so when things loosen up again. We also waived the work search requirements. So again, normally in UI, unless it's like a shutdown situation where an employer might shut down for 2 weeks, and manufacturers do this from time to time, and then call folks back. If it was a temporary shutdown, there's never a work search requirement, but we have waived the work search requirement right now, so that during the state of emergency, we're not going to require people to go out there and look for jobs. We know that there are some employers that are hiring. The essential employer list was issued yesterday, so we know that grocers, logistics companies, medical facilities are going to be hiring throughout this, and including some manufacturers, especially who are transitioning to develop products that are needed right now. That there's going to be some hiring that takes place, but generally, most people, where 2 weeks ago we had more jobs than people, we don't have that situation right now because of the environment we're in. So we are waiving the work search requirement that's on the application. And then, a couple of things that came through last night that I just want to talk about. We are creating some definition around good cause. So that means if someone leaves their job on their own accord, but it's because they believe they have a reasonable risk for exposure, so they're going into self-quarantine, or they're having to care for someone who is impacted by this illness and they're having to leave their job for that, then they're going to qualify for unemployment insurance. Also, and I think the biggest impact is allowing those individuals that typically do not qualify for UI because they do not pay UI tax to they now qualify. So that's a full gamut of folks, including some nonprofits. That includes a lot of daycares that are connected to religious institutions that don't have to file taxes. That's independent contractors, the self-employed, a lot of the cosmetologists, and those folks who lost their jobs last week can now apply. But it's a really broad definition, just meaning that anyone who did not typically qualify for UI now qualifies. And so that's brought a lot of questions, I know, for folks that are employers that fall into that category. That means asking, are they going to be charged for that, their employees? The answer to that is no. What we're doing right now is, and this has multiple impacts across the board, but we are not charging against any employer's account right now, whether they are a paying employer or not. And so that means that if employers typically did not pay UI tax, they're still going to be eligible. They're not going to get a bill for this. And also for employers that do, we are charging just against the pool of our UI trust fund. We have just through two pieces of legislation at the federal level, both last week and one that was approved by the Senate last night that we anticipate will be approved by the House tomorrow, provides financial backstop for states to be able to take this action. So that's good on a couple of fronts. It provides protection for our state UI trust fund, that we have that federal backing, but it also protects those employers who do pay a UI tax. It's going to protect their rates in the midst of all of this. So the ways that we're approaching this is, obviously we want as many people that can to get UI in this circumstance, but we also want to protect our employers so that they do not see just huge inflated tax rates when all of this is over. So we're doing everything we can right now to make sure those two things happen, plus that we protect the financial solvency of our UI trust fund. So that, again, just to recap some of the things that we've waived or modified: the 1 week waiting period, which allows individuals to have a full 2 week payment for that right off the bat. We're waiving the able and available to work requirement, the work search requirement. We've opened it up for individuals who've had to leave their job because of self-quarantine or to care for a family member in this circumstance, and opening it up to those who typically do not qualify. So those are the big things that we've done right off the bat. We've made these decisions really quickly. I'll also say we're trying to catch our technology and applications up to this. And so what I'll say is if there's individuals who have applied and they've received something back that says they're not eligible, the governor said it last night, especially those who don't typically qualify, if they already received a notification that said they didn't qualify, we're processing what they submitted last week. Now that we have this permission, we have a rate schedule that's been provided to us so that, based upon some different variables, that they'll still be able to get paid. They do not need to reapply and right now at all. So one is just to keep people off of the application process. We've obviously seen a significant increase in applications. And so if we want to make this as easy as possible on folks, so that those folks that became eligible last night that may have already applied, they do not need to reapply. We will work that out on the back end. We're also making some changes to the application so that people will not have to do the work search those changes should be made today. Hopefully that it just bypasses that in the application. So I know that's holding some folks up, but we're making those modifications as we go. Something else that we've done for employers, we've always had a process for large scale layoffs, especially temporary layoffs. It's called the e-claims process. And so traditionally in that circumstance, if an employer is having a large layoff, they can submit claims on behalf of their employees. And so that those employees do not have to go in and file independently. We have lowered the requirements for the size of companies as well as the amount of the layoff. So now companies that are at least they have 50 employees and they're laying off 15 individuals can do the e-claim process. And so for those employers that are interested in this, and we are encouraging this, it's a much faster, more efficient process on all ends of the equation. I'm going to give you an email address to send to our office. Someone will respond with instructions on how to go down this road. But that email address is UIEClaims, so UIECLAIMS @ky.gov. So if that is something, again, 50 employees who are at least a company with 50 employees who are laying off at least 15 individuals, send an email to that email address and someone on our team will respond with instructions on how to file, also how to communicate to that to your employees, so that they do not have to go out and submit an individual claim. That's, again, just a really efficient process to get this done. Some other things that we are doing called work share. So these are situations where the hours of employees are reducing, and as a result, their pay is reducing. You can use unemployment insurance funding to provide a gap in that reduced wage and hour for those employees. So that's another option that's available to employers who want to go down that road. I'm going to give you another email address if you have questions on that, and it's simply just workforce@ky.gov. So if you're interested in WorkShare, send an email to that address, and we'll make sure that someone reaches out and makes those connections for you. Some other questions that we've received, and we answered this a lot last week as restaurants and bars were laying off, but individuals who have that work off partial commission or commission altogether, that we look at not their base wage in that scenario, but their total taxable income is the information that we're looking for when we determine the amount that they're going to be eligible for. So it's not, if somebody makes a lower base wage and then they're compensated more on the commission side, that's okay. We'll look at their total taxable income and wages in those scenarios. There's a couple of things I just want to point out that we're still working on, that we know we have to come up with an answer for, and we're searching for it. One is if someone hasn't worked long enough in the last year to qualify. First of all, what we want them to do is go ahead and apply. That's if someone has only worked for 5 months and they haven't worked 3 of the 4 quarters of the past year, we want them to go ahead and apply. There's going to be some relief that's coming in some federal legislation that's going to allow us to make some accommodations there. We also know, and this may not apply as much to businesses, but it's more general information. We are working for a solution for those individuals who were already on unemployment when this all began about how they can request an extension. These are just some additional complications and scenarios that we're having to work through so that we can make sure that individuals are covered while there are not a lot of jobs out there to search for. But our commitment is to make sure that anyone who is experiencing job loss right now can be covered. The federal government is allowing us a lot of flexibilities right now that they normally do not do. And so we are taking advantage of those to make sure that the coverage is there for those who need it. Just a couple of additional items that just to keep your eye out on. The specifically in terms of the weekly benefit. So the maximum weekly benefit in Kentucky is $552 a week. There's a really complicated algorithm that comes up with that amount. The average weekly benefit is about $350 a week. So that's just to keep that in mind. Some things to also keep in mind is that while you have individuals who are laid off, we're treating this as a temporary situation, because what we are hopeful is that when we're able to restart things, is that the employers out there are going to be able to recall people back to work, and that most folks are going to be able to go right back to the job that they were in when all this started. So with that in mind, employers can continue to pay insurance and benefits for individuals that are laid off. They can provide gap compensation as well. So those are all options out there. And again, every company has a different scenario based upon their company policies and procedures. But if you have specific questions on those different options, that email address, workforce@ky.gov, just send those questions to that email, and we'll work through it so that you can have a scenario that works for your company and for your employees. The federal legislation that was approved by the Senate last night, we don't obviously know all the details yet, but we do know this, is that there is a proposal to provide additional weekly benefits on top of what states already pay. The number that was approved by the Senate is $600. It's being reported in all the major media outlets. It still has to go through the House, so we'll see what that ends up looking like. But either way, it looks like there is a commitment from Congress in this stimulus bill to provide additional weekly benefits on top of what states already pay. So that's coming. So how that would work, hypothetically, is that when the states receive that additional funding, is that we will just start adding that to benefits as soon as we have it. They may tell us that we can backdate some things. I don't know if they will. They typically don't. But we'll just add it to the weekly benefit amount as soon as we get that, whatever that amount ends up being. The other piece on that is it's going to allow us, this plays into the announcement that was made last night. Again, in that legislation, they're calling it pandemic unemployment assistance. That is going to provide the funding for those individuals that do not typically qualify. We know this has been something that's been discussed for the last week and a half. So again, the federal government showing the support that we need to approve as many folks as possible for unemployment insurance. There's also a provision to extend benefits. We'll see what that extension looks like. Generally, it's been talked about 13 additional weeks on UI if it's needed. So we'll just see, how all that federal legislation works itself out. But we will obviously modify those who are receiving benefits based upon the additional resources that we receive. Right now, the maximum time that somebody can spend on unemployment is 26 weeks. But if we obviously get that extension, it can be added to, should it be needed to be added to, um, along those fronts. But those are a lot of the changes that are taking place. I do want to talk briefly about just the employer requirement for, let's say you do not e-claim, you don't fall into that category of 50 employees and 15 on the layoff. Um, you know what what's going to happen there is that it's going to be the burden of the individual who lost their job to apply. And in that process, they identify who their previous employers were. And then our staff interacts with those employers to verify dates, employment history, and all of those things. So if you have employees that fall into that category, our team will be reaching out to you to help us verify that information. The sooner it's verified, the sooner we can process the claims and all of those things. So but it's on the individual. Again, if it's not an e-claim situation, it's on the individual to apply. And but do know, especially for those who have not done this before, that our office will reach out to just verify that individual was employed with your organization. Just a couple of other things just to let you all know that we're working on it. Obviously, our system has received a significant amount of increased traffic over the past week and a half. We've built server capacity up now like tenfold from where it was a week ago to keep our system healthy. We've also provided an alternative application should the system go down. We did have to use that last night right after the governor made the announcement. We had to switch over to the alternative application process just due to the volume. We are also adding 70 more individuals to our call center so that we can process calls. Our career center partners that are in your communities are helping us out tremendously to field calls. So the last thing we want to do is for the individuals who are losing their job to have to sit on hold all day. And we know that's a problem. We're working on it. And our local partners have been fantastic. Local workforce boards, local career center staff have been fantastic to pivot and assist in this way. And so we'll be adding, again, at least 70 more individuals to the call center to field those calls. And we're also adding, we've been adding this week upwards of 150 people to process and review claims so that we do not develop a large backlog on claims. So that's really an overview of what we've been doing and what the different scenarios are. I think, again, the things that we want to encourage are individuals who may not traditionally have enough work history over the last year. Go ahead and apply. That way we'll have the application. And things are changing daily on what we can do. And so we want those individuals to go ahead and apply. And in very short order, we're going to have an answer on those folks whose UI is about to run out. How we're going to be able to extend them. But we will have a solution for that. So again, we're going to try to be as accommodating as we can to make sure that all the individuals that possible that need this can receive the benefit. And again, I'll just repeat those email addresses first on e-claims. So again, if you're an employer with 50 employees who might be laying off at least 15 individuals, email UI eClaims, UIECLAIMS @ky.gov. But then if you have general questions about whether it be work share or different, compensation scenarios that you'd like to provide for your employees, email workforce@ky.gov. And that'll allow us to respond quickly. And we ask that you do do that initial outreach that way because our phones are getting burned up right now. And so if we need to call, if we can't resolve it and get you an answer over email, we will absolutely give you a call and talk you through those different scenarios. But again, we want to be as accommodating and as flexible as we possibly can. And as changes continue to be made, whether it be at the federal level or at the state level, we'll make those accommodations. But that's an overview of what we've been doing, how employers are involved, how you can guide your employees, and again, feel free to reach out to our office or your local career center. We have staff there that can assist individuals with UI and can talk to employers also. So feel free to do those, and we're happy to help.
Thank you so much, Deputy Secretary Benton. We appreciate your time today and all that you are doing to help our employers and our employees through this tough time. I'm sure all the chamber presidents who are on with us here today will be getting that information out, and we will have the video available as well if you would like to go back for further reference. But again, thanks to everyone, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more from your chamber presidents later. And Deputy Secretary, let us know if there's anything we can do to help you.
Thank you. I appreciate all the support from the state chamber to the local chambers. It's just been, the level of partnership that we've seen, public-private, to our workforce partners that are attached to our workforce boards, is really just been phenomenal. And we're just really thankful for the opportunities to talk to a lot of people at once, but for the level of partnership that we've received in this. And if there's more that we can do, just feel free to reach out and we'll do everything we can.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.